Did bin Laden organize the attacks of September the 11th? And if so, did he do it alone or with someone else? At this point, we must explain the origins of Al-Qaeda. Bin Laden founded Al-Qaeda in 1989 at the end of the war between the Soviet Union and Muslim guerrillas in Afghanistan. It was after that war and not for that war. So who or what were all those Muslim guerrillas supposed to fight?
What did Al-Qaeda mean at that time? And this is very interesting. We'd have to go to Robin Cook, the late Foreign Secretary. In the Guardian article, he confirmed that Al-Qaeda was a term that was invented by the CIA, and it had been invented to designate a database of mujahideen that were recruited and trained by the CIA. And he's right, because the Arabic word for database, you just have to add this word. It's Al-Qaeda Ma'lumat. Al-Qaeda means the base, and Ma'lumat means data. Together it means database.
Al-Qaeda is fake. Al-Qaeda is not an organization. Al-Qaeda is only a label. There is no organization like Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a list of participants in the Afghanistan war of the 80s. Al-Qaeda is nothing. It is only a puppet blown up by the Western propaganda to show the public the big evil.
I was chief of the visa section at the American Consulate General in Jeddah between September 1987 and March 1989. During my period there, I was involved in what turned out to be a Visas for Terrorists program, with people coming to the consulate recruited by the Central Intelligence Agency and its asset Osama bin Laden, and sent to America, either for instruction in how to be good terrorists, or for rewards, or for debriefings on what they've been doing in Afghanistan. I assume it was simply on how to blow things up, shoot things down, and overthrow governments.
After the Cold War, their connections with Al-Qaeda proliferated, multiplied. Al-Qaeda is being controlled in various ways, directly and indirectly. Systematically, Al-Qaeda has been used in various theatres of conflict. So from 1992 to 95, you look at the Bosnian conflict.
I believe that the American government was working with various Arab and Muslim organizations, whether it was Al-Qaeda or whether it was people that became Al-Qaeda, to be trained, to be armed, and to be sent to the Balkans to overthrow Slobodan Milosevic and anybody allied with him.
That kind of policy continued in the Balkans all the way up to post-2001.
American Secret Services, who only delivered weapons during the war, after the war also engaged the jobless mujahideen on their own payroll. That is a proven fact. There are a lot of testimonies of mujahideen before German courts. They were hired by subcontractors of the Pentagon, namely the private contractor MPRI, Military Professional Resources Incorporated. MPRI is formally private, but in fact it's kind of secret device of the US Army. They have more 4-star general under contract than the Pentagon itself. If the Pentagon wants to do some dirty job and thinks they cannot get the money and they cannot get the approval of the US Congress, they give the job to this private company. At the beginning of summer 1999, MPRI brought this Bosnian Mujahideen back to the Balkans, especially into Kosovo, to help the Kosovo terrorist army KLA. They engaged them, they paid them monthly. A lot of Bosnian Mujahideen were involved in the big terrorist attacks of the last 5 years. So, speaking about 9/11, 5 of 7 Arabs in the center of the 9/11 plot were former Mujahideen fighters in Bosnia. 5 of 7. Nobody speaks about it.
What is required for you to get a visa approved to enter the United States? The type of information you have to supply is extremely detailed. But a high-ranking official in the US consulate of Jeddah, Michael Springman, revealed the fact that in that office, many CIA agents were working undercover and that the office was issuing too many visas far too easily to some very suspicious people.
I was told by a really good contact, a businessman outside the American consulate, that if I had sent one word to the State Department inspection team investigating what was going on in the consulate, I would be fired summarily.
Well, that office in Jeddah issued many of the 15 visas that were used by the hijackers to enter the United States. None of the 15 applications conformed to US visa regulations. For example, under the heading Destination, many of them wrote Hotel, New York or California, and in one case, just no.
And so, it was common practice to help the terrorists of Al-Qaeda to enter the United States. They came to be trained, and this went on for years and years. The same thing happened with the hijackers of September the 11th.
The terrorists, 6 of the terrorists, including Muhammad Atta, trained at U.S. military facilities. Okay? Muhammad Atta went to International Officer School at Maxwell Air Force Base.
Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama, Brooks Air Force Base in Texas. Their contact address, the Pensacola Naval Station in Florida, the Defense Language Institute of the Defense Intelligence Agency in Monterey, California. The hands of intelligence are all over these people.
So, to sum up, the main hijackers trained and fought in ex-Yugoslavia, where they were paid by a company of mercenaries that was connected to the Pentagon. Thanks to the CIA, they got entry visas to the United States. Once they were in America, they did everything they could to be recognized and to attract attention to themselves, since they were sure of their impunity. They trained in American military bases and went to flight schools, although they didn't learn to fly.
All the testimony about these lessons indicate that these men were completely incapable of maneuvering even small aeroplanes. For example, Mohammed Atta hired an aeroplane from a flight school, but he was not even able to take off. So he left it there on the runway and went away. Regarding 2 other pilots, their instructor, Rick Grazer, said to investigators and the press that he could not understand how these 2 could have maneuvered an aeroplane. His exact words were that it was like Dumb and Dumber in a plane.
Two FBI agents, Colleen Rowley in Minneapolis in the state of Minnesota, and another who was in Phoenix in Arizona, sent messages to the FBI's headquarters in Washington, saying, more or less, watch out. There are many Arabs here who have enrolled in flight schools.
The first person in the flight school that called the FBI took a big risk, because at the time what he was doing was reporting about a customer, a paying customer. And those flight schools depended upon, to a certain extent, foreign pilots. And so now he's reporting about a paying customers. You know, this person is very suspicious. A list of facts that pointed to Musawi being a terrorist. He wanted to learn to fly but not take off and land. I have never seen such a unusual person seeking flight instruction.
Colin Rowley
immediately informed her superiors in Washington, but nothing happened. Their investigations were obstructed.
Were no warning signs that I'm aware of that would indicate this type of operation in the country.
I wrote a memo in May of 2002, 13-page memo, is the Joint Intelligence Committee report. And both of those were, I hope, you know, basically what my memo did was expose that this was not true, that 9/11 could not have been prevented. The FBI's acting director, a guy by the name of Picard, during the summer of 9/11, he attempted to brief Attorney General Ashcroft about terrorism a couple of times. And the first time, Ashcroft showed little interest in terrorism. In fact, Ashcroft ended up ranking terrorism as his lowest priority in August of 2001. At one point, Picard was told by Ashcroft, "I don't want to hear any more about terrorism."
After September 11, 2001, when I heard about the planes crashing into the World Trade Towers and into the Pentagon, I said, geez, these were the same people, according to the Los Angeles Times, who had gotten their visas from the American Consulate General at Jeddah. I called the Federal Bureau of Investigation and tell them essentially the basics of the Visas for Terrorists program. I did this. I called and I called and I called. I was passed from one office of the FBI to another and ended up at the Washington field office, and someone there said, "We'll get back to you." Well, 6 years later, I'm still waiting.
We received these audio tapes that were obtained 3 months before September 11, 2001, from a different field office, Iranian informant who'd been on FBI's payroll for 10 years, since about 1991, 1992, in April 2001. And in April 2001, this informant told the FBI that on a separate issue, he had obtained information about Al-Qaeda, bin Laden, issuing an attack in the United States that would involve 5 major cities, and it will involve airplanes, and that the attack was going to take place within the next few months. They took the information, they found it important, they filled out forms, they came back to the headquarters, and then they filed it. They gave it to the superiors, right? Nothing happened. 2 months later, they met with the same informant again. And the informant asked, he said, "Did you do something with that information I gave you, because it came from really reliable sources?" And the agent said, "Yes, we gave it to our superiors." Well, nothing happened. Nobody followed up on this.
They discovered Ramzi Youssef's computer with the Bojinka plan in 1996 in the Philippines. It talked about taking hijacked planes and running them into the Pentagon, the White House, the Capitol, the CIA headquarters, and the Twin Towers. The Pentagon staged an exercise a year before, in October of 2000, at the site with the Arlington County Fire Department to simulate a plane running into the Pentagon and how the fire responders would get there and what they would do. So this was not outside the box or, out in the blue. They not only expected it, they prepared for it.
One of the most frequent declarations made by the Bush administration was that these attacks took us by surprise.
I don't think anybody could have predicted that they would try to use an airplane as a missile, a hijacked airplane as a missile.
And I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes in the building.